this, you know, um, uh, they mix numbers in a way that is, aggregation, which makes it kind of difficult to even study the reality of the continent. Aggregate numbers like, Africa, poverty in Africa, birth rate in Africa, some employment in Africa, that Africa, which is absolutely, an illusion. Yes, there is a Nigeria, there is a Cameroon, there is, and these numbers, economically speaking, politically speaking, are completely different. At different stages, you cannot compare, let's say, South Africa with Morocco in terms of political systems. One is a kingdom, and the other one is a republic that is nascent, and strongly nascent. As a matter of
Um, we're live. We're live on the Pan African Daily, and we can see our audience already jumping in. I think they're wondering, did the show start? No, the show didn't
Oh
start.
no, I didn't know I
We
was
were
live.
still we were still in the back room trying to sort ourselves out and just have some small talk. Then I saw you suddenly just popping in. So I didn't even know that, the technical had launched us live though.
Oh
So
no.
yes. No, it's okay, but we were on topic. I mean, it was not something like we were off topic. So I want to salute all those that are coming. Probably I have to put the jingle so those that are waiting that kind of notification would understand that we are live. So yeah, as you can see. Okay. You are watching the Pan African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Wow. Wonderful. I think today is a very, very how do I want to say? It's a Pan-African day. It's a Pan-African day, people. And even when we haven't started the show, it's like all your federal movements and committees and everybody's just in the house. Like, wow. I mean, even as we just launching, we're almost more than 200 already connected. I think everybody just knows this is the day. Politics is very important in terms of the Africa that we want, in terms of the Africa of yesterday, Africa of today. When we talk about Africa in politics, we talk about even the historic part of Africa, the historic Africa. And we have the cultural Africa, the economic Africa, the religious Africa. We just have those terms that actually helps us to be like a punching block when we are opening up our conversation today. And that's why our topic for today is actually on politics. And we have Professor Joomaay Faye Ndongo in the studio who says political unification is going to beat neocolonialism. He is very sure and he has the facts correct. So that's why I invited all of you that are really interested in the Africa we want, particularly politically aspirant, those that are aspiring to be politicians and leaders of the continent and Africa. This is a very, very sane topic that I think everyone should share, right? There's nothing. We've seen that in terms of culture, we are very, very united. We are not disorganized in terms of our culture, even our diversity and every other thing. But politics is where the hack is. Because every leadership, every laws, every system, whatever it is, is determined by the politics of the political situation at stake. So that's why I'm very happy that you are joining in your numbers, because this topic is of essence and it's not ending today. It's a series that we're starting with Professor Joomaay, and he will be inviting all his other counterparts as we roll up in this series. You know, you're looking like a Graphi, a Cameroonian. And I'm sitting here, a daughter of Cameroon, looking like a Senegalese migrant.
I am Cameroonian by heart.
I mean, it's amazing. Like, I just feel like jump into my wardrobe and we be in our Togo right now. So welcome to the show, sir. You've been on the continent, you've been in Cameroon. We miss each other. I heard you on the radio and the university. I mean, you were just everywhere on the continent. I mean, before we get into is that where you got your Pan African dress code or how?
Actually, this shirt, I got it in 2019 when Professor Obenga and I went there to launch the regional committee for Central African Indian Ocean of the Pan African Fellows Movement. A dear friend of mine, Maurice Tadege, who used to be the late Maurice Tadege, a professor at the University of Yaoundé, one excellent Pan Africanist, who had actually headed the civil society project for a United States of Africa and was working tightly with Gaddafi and them. You know, his daughter is the one, Joanna Tadege. She is the one who told me, look, you are a Bamileke, you are a Cameroonian, so I want my father, whenever he's going, that he wear his American, his Cameroonian, structure. Because right now, my dad isn't here, my biological dad is not here, but you are my father because you are continuing what he's doing, and I love you for that. But just allow me, Doctor, to say hello to everyone, and I'm really happy to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you, Dr. Tata. You have all the wonderful questions to ask. And also, you egg people towards kind of thinking much deeper on the topics when many will just give you light answer. You do not tolerate light answers. So I like that a lot about you. So in fact, my name is Joomaay. I am the Secretary General of the Pan-African Fellows Movement International Committee, but I'm not here to speak on behalf of the Pan-African Fellows Movement. So I may say things that don't agree with the Pan-African Fellows Movement. It is don't take the Pan-African Fellows Movement as the responsible of what I'm saying. These are personal opinion that I'm expressing. Yeah, some of them match with the Pan-African Fellows Movement, but some of them I'm not sure. I just don't want any mistake or misspeaking that I will do here to be put into the account of the Pan-African Fellows Movement. But I was in Cameroon, where I was really, had the chance to appear in many different television shows, give conferences at 4 different universities on Pan-Africanism in the 21st century and the African Renaissance. And then I was in Chad, N'Djamena, where I was in national television also speaking about this. Then I was in the Republic of Congo, where I was also in national television. And then in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where I kind of was invited impromptu in a daily a show, and it was really, it felt good. But at the same time, Dr. Tata, because I took the bus between Yaoundé and Douala 4 times, and we're saying that Africa is rich in resources. I was not, it really hit me to see the richness of Cameroon and the contrast between that richness of resources and the poverty people are struggling with, pulling the devil by the tail, trying to survive when everything is there. And it really dawned to me that we do need something to transform these resources in richness. We do need states that are able to stand and be able to help people have access to resources that will help them transform these resources in richnesses to make European or Chinese growth like a silly small number compared to what will happen. And I think that that is going to be in the trajectory that we'll be talking about today with African unity and so on and so forth. Thank you very much.
You're already punching the ball like it's like you're definitely already in the second part of neocolonialism and the resources of Africa. And I think the biggest thing now that we have to embrace is anyway, let's I know it's very vast and it's very rich in content. That's why I love the fact that you have taken that responsibility to be a correspondent and a lecturer and in this series, not just a one-time conversation, but coming off, as much as you can so that we take this lectures right to the end. Just having a one time conversation is not going to even mean anything. All right. But before we get into the topic, I also want to give a shout out to all my followers and viewers and to your huge audience that has missed you a lot, that are watching you from all over. Capo Verde is right here in the house. Illinois is here. Belize, Central America is right here. And I know the girls from the woods are here, right? And so, yes, everybody's here. South Africans are here, Ghanaians are here, Cameroonians. I think Cameroonians are really, really attracted because your show was one of the biggest show and is still played on the national TV in Cameroon, but also on the radios and in the university. Honestly, I reach students from the university, Pan-African students, reach out to me and like, Dr. Tata, do you know that we have an incredible leader that we are ignoring? If you have met people like Muammar Gaddafi, you've met all the big guns that we're talking about, like personally, right? It's not like we just here and you've met Thomas Sankara. These are people that you've actually got to interact with them. Like you've been that lecture, that model, that mentor. And so it's really worth that, Africans should begin to understand whom they look at, whom they listen to. So I'll go direct into. Would you want to break down some meanings? For instance, what is a political unification?
Absolutely. Thank you very much to Dr. Tata. Uh, it is indeed important to break down what is political unification, and because some people talk about economic unification, some people talk about uh, just to agree a little bit of a, there is what is called, and I want to just differentiate here, you know, because people sometimes confuse Pan-Africanism with African unionism. Pan-Africanism is different from African unionism because within the Pan-African people, Pan-African movement, there are people who are from different form of unions of Africa. Some are for cultural unity, some are for economic unity, some are for political unity, but they are all Pan-African. So the African unions, some are, for continental unity, while others are only for Pan-African unity, which means the unification of the southern part of the Sahara Desert of Africa with its diaspora. Like my brother Kwesi Pra, in South Africa from Cameroon. These they are Chinwezu, for example, from Nigeria. These people are for Pan-African unity. When, for example, someone like Kwame Nkrumah, someone like Sheikh Anta Diop, they are for continental unity, but they are all Pan-African. So, many people when you speak about Pan-African, they say, okay, it's African unity. No, Pan-Africanism is different from African unity. Pan-Africanism is about, the consciousness of the necessity of a solidarity between black people. Let me just repeat that again. The
Yes.
consciousness, it has two, Pan-Africanism stands on two pillars. The first pillar, especially I'm talking about the 21st century, and that pillar, there is the first pillar that is the foundation of Pan-Africanism, which is the consciousness of the necessity of solidarity between black people because of the inextricability of their destiny.
Mhm.
Their destiny is inextricable. That's a fundamental. Then the second pillar of Pan-Africanism is now the consciousness that people of African descent, Black people, their destiny is tied to the position of Africa in the geopolitical map of the world. If you are Black in Tartar, if you are a Black in Zimbabwe, if you are a Black in New York, and you go to a place where you are a minority, the way people look at you is the respect people give you is on the size of that Africa occupies on the world geopolitical map. Since Africa is absent, people don't respect you. So that second pillar of Pan-Africanism changes throughout years. There was a time where, the end of slavery. There was a time where decolonization. There is a time of where which was initiated by Marcus Garvey, the African Union, who started to see that, and he is the father of African unionism, not Pan-African. Some people confusing Pan-African with African unionism tend to give Marcus Garvey. No, he's not the father of Pan-Africanism. He is the father of really for African unionism, and it's tied to the restoration of the sovereignty and dignity of Black people in general. That's what the big, what Marcus Garvey brought big into the Pan-African movement, even though he didn't call himself Pan-African, but indeed, the Negro movement is really the copy, the ancestor or the father of what today, 20th century, on we call Pan-African, end of 19th century, 20th century. So political unification means that a mutualization by the people of the different countries in Africa and the countries outside of Africa where the majority is Black,
Mm.
the mutualization of the management of some portion of their sovereignty. It includes political unification, includes military aspect, it includes economic aspect, it includes cultural aspect. Politics is the organizer, is the umbrella to organize everything. Societies are organized by the political superstructure. They're not organized by the religious superstructure. Even countries that call themselves Islamic countries, it's an Islamic political superstructure that is organizing everything else in the country. So when we talk about political unification, we mean that some portions of sovereignty, a group of them must be managed together, must be much mutualized. That's what political unification really means. It is not that we have to merge political parties. No, it has nothing to do with political parties. It has to do with sovereignty portions to be managed. It's a management of sovereignty portions together. The mutualization of these portions of sovereignty that we know our state are unable to manage. Money is the most evident one. This is why in Senegal, it's the French citizens who determine how much a cup of peanuts in the markets in Dakar will cost. How much a fisherman in Senegal who goes to the sea is a French person who determines how much he could sell their fish. What is the exchange? At what level that fish could be exchanged with other product? So that's part, like that. That means that Senegal doesn't control that portion of sovereignty. The issue of the debt, the issue of the diplomacy, the issue of the defense, and all of that stuff. Why do Mali have to have these Russians to come and defend them? Why? Why do the Central African Republic has to have to pay Wagner Group to come and defend them? And there are plenty of young people who will die for their countries in those countries. you know and that's exactly what we're talking about. Why did, for example, when the Niger new regime asked the ambassador of France to leave, he didn't leave. Macron humiliated them a long time because before he decided to withdraw his ambassador. Some misled Pan Africanists started to cheer. Yes, we were for. No, they were not forced. That should show you that you don't have sovereignty, because if the Niger ambassador in France, if he was, if France had asked for their departure, he will not be there more than 24 hours. So all of that is about political unification. Let organize, let manage together essential portions of sovereignty which are making our countries unable to survive.
The second part, we are still on the definition,
Mhm.
because we have to chop down this elephant into pieces, because this is very, very important, a very key aspect. Like you said, we cannot manage. How would we be begging for soldiers, whether Russians or whoever or China, to be able to support us? That's not functional. And we go about saying that we are stars, as if we're just playing ping pong around the area. Now, the second definition I would like you to break it down is neo-colonialism. I mean, these are two words. We have the
Absolutely.
colonialism. Probably
Mhm.
you still have. I mean, we're in the lectures, right? And
Mhm.
I want you to do what I heard you did at the university in Yaoundé. I mean, you really broke it down like as if you were speaking, and I could really understand it, right? So, neo-colonialism, what is it really? Let's be
Absolutely.
clear on it.
Absolutely. First of all, Susan, let me just say one thing, okay? Colonialism itself, the purpose is economical. It is not political. It is not military. It is not security. It is economical. If you look at how colonialism happened, it was first, if you had the explorers after the Berlin Conference, explorers were launched by, not by government, by companies to go and look for where and what kind of agreement they could have with different kings in Africa in order to create more business for themselves. That's and when these explorers came, the economic the investors who sent them, because these explorers were paid not by government but by businesses in England, in France, and somewhere else. Okay, so when they came, they had this accord. The case of Uganda is fantastic, for example. Where you have had people wanting to seize some land because they wanted to have some sort of railroad, because they wanted to have some sort of exploitation of things, you know but there was a resistance. First they brought the church to try to get to legitimize their presence there, and then the church went back and said, oh, these are souls to be saved. And the
Mhm.
pressure of the church with the investors hiding behind the church. This pressure is what brought governments in, because government was lobbied to come in afterward in order to protect the investors, through
Mm.
the lobbying of the church, through all that kind of thing of nonsense of, yes, these are souls to be saved. Okay, so colonialism is an economic thing. Now, of course, in the first phase, if you want to subdue people, you have to have some sort of force. And that force brought in an administration. So you have colonial administration and the military presence in the colonial. But don't be fooled, because you see, colonialism, let me just go by there, is only the colonial country is a softener. They are not the sole exploiter. Imperialism as a whole is the exploiter. Like the case, for example, of Tunisia, in the 19th century, toward the second part of the 19th century. France was the one who won, indeed, the battle for the control of Tunisia. But there were more German economic economic activities and Italian activities, then they were French. So France controlled the political system, it controlled the military, but it gets kicked back from the others. So the colonial power is nothing but a softener for imperialism to come. And what exactly is colonialism in that sense? You know, the purpose of colonialism is to extract national surplus value from the country. What we economists call national surplus value is, if you look at the economy of the country, people produce every year. If what they produce, you take everything else but what they need to survive. That's what colonialism is. And the impact of that is that at home, the people that you exploit, you could give them some of the exploitation product that you get from outside, come them, while you continue to exploit them, you could kind of give them a better way of life. This is why, for example, if we talk about the French working class or the German working class, they got a kickback from the exploitation of Cameroon, from the exploitation of Senegal, which make their life a little bit better, without actually being anywhere far from just being continued being exploited by the capitalist system. So imperialism is an evolution which will actually, instead of getting no more just national surplus value, no, sorry, individual surplus value from the individual, but it will get national surplus values from a whole country. This is why, for example, our countries, under colonialism, people work. They work very hard. But the more you work, the poorer you get. Because no surplus value capital, rich wealth comes from surplus value, meaning the part of what you have produced that you don't consume. But that doesn't stay home, but it goes somewhere else. Now, after World War II, after many Africans, the Fifth Pan-African Congress and other events, a conjunction of events made it impossible to continue to have a colonial system, which is a foreign administration and a military presence that is outright, that is too visible. Mainly a colonial administration. This is why the imperialists decided, okay, let's continue colonialism, but in a form that is less repulsive. And the form that is less repulsive is to have a black president, black generals, black members of parliament, have a black administration, an African administration. Give a flag and make it look like, independence in a word, in one word. So that when they knew that their system of outright colonialism is no longer sustainable, they decided to go into a new form of colonization. And that is what the neocolonialism is. A new form of colonization that is less repulsive, but still the purpose of colonialism will continue to be respected in terms of, because the first purpose is economic anyway. So that's what neocolonialism is in a way. You have what they call independence. And we could come back onto that because there is also a lot of confusion about independence and sovereignty. So you do have independence, meaning that you can choose the policies that you want, but they made sure that you don't have the wherewithals to implement those policies, which is fundamental for sovereignty. Neocolonialism is then giving countries the capacity or the liberty to choose their policies independent, without providing them or keeping or doing everything to keep them from being able to have the wherewithal to implement those policies. And for that to happen, the plan was that we have to give them small countries that cannot sustain themselves, like Senegal, like Gambia, like Guinea-Bissau, like others, you know, and countries that we cannot break, like Nigeria, like the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have to have another tactic for those countries not to be able to sustain themselves. And what was that tactic? That tactic is to devoid them from what they call social capital. Social capital. And how do you devoid a country of social capital? It's by creating a suspicion, a mortal suspicion between the major component of that particular country. In Nigeria, we all know the Igbo, the Yoruba, the Hausa, what Nigerians themselves call the Wazobia, Wazobis. They have a mortal suspicion between each other. And all the instability of Nigeria come from that suspicion that was created ably by the British. So that Nigeria, if you look in, we say that development is the product of resources times social capital. Resources, Nigeria has plenty, people, land, everything. But social capital is next to zero. So if you multiply a big number by a zero, almost close to zero, well, the product is almost next to zero. So that makes Nigeria an undevelopable almost country. The same thing, they did the same thing in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Enormous resources. But, what did they do? Moise Chombe is a candidate. We have to find him, with secession. And they tried the trick that they tried on Nkrumah. Federalism, yes. This is why some of the support of Chombe saying, oh, he was a federalist. Nonsense. That was not federalism. What it was the empowerment of local chiefs by the colonialists and the incapacitation of the central government to manage anything.
Wow.
This is what exactly was going to happen to Kwame Nkrumah. And some misguided Pan-Africanists somehow say that Kwame Nkrumah was against federalism. Instead of reading Nkrumah, they misquote him, they misrepresent him. Yeah, he was against federalism. Yes, Kwame Nkrumah was against the form of federalism that the British wanted Ghana to adopt. Just like Jomo Kenyatta and them, they refused that form of federalism too after. They accepted it, but 1 year later, they took it off. Because that form of federalism was indeed, the British know that they had still control over these local chiefs, and regional federalism, meaning that they will still continue to have the power, the decision, while incapacitating the central government. The Kwame Nkrumah wrote about that. So that was part of destroying the capital social. That form of federalism was just like the Nigerian federalism, is a form of destroying social capital. The form of federalism that Moise Chombe wanted is a form of this way of destroying social capital, so that the country is undevelopable. If it's undevelopable, it has resources, what is it? It becomes a neo-colony, because countries don't go bankrupt. So neo-colonialism is indeed colonialism, but focused, if you talk about domestically, on the economic aspect. But now on international relations, it also has tying the country, making the country dependable on the main neo-colonialist, or the orchestra of neo-colonialism, like France. Today, all the actions of the West African countries, all of that, their alliance with France and all of that stuff, they yes meant to France. And that is because, indeed, France is the main colonial, but China, Germany, all of them are part of the system of neo-colonialism in Senegal. Some misguided intellectuals say, "Oh no, we have changed our main partners in terms of commerce, while they're using the CFA." How could you say that you are independent if you're using a money, if you're renting somebody else's money? You can't have your own money, So that's what it's really important for people to understand that it's a system. No individual could come and break that system. No individual. And I give you the example of Thomas Sankara, with whom I spent 2 years. He had the will to break neocolonialism, but he was an individual, a group of individuals. The system. And this is why we're probably going to go into the second portion, because how do you break neocolonialism? What exactly do you have to do? Because, and you have to take, if you want, the lesson of those who came before us. Modibo Keita and Senghor, they tried to create the Mali Federation. And when they failed, Senghor said, we are only given lollipops, not developable countries. In Central Africa, Barthélemy Boganda tried to create the Republic of Central Africa. Nothing happened. In East Africa, they tried to create the East African, Federation.
Sorry.
What happened? The British went and boogeymaned some Kikuyu people and told Jomo Kenyatta, because Nyerere wanted Jomo Kenyatta to be the president of the Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Some Kikuyu came and said, if you go, the Luos will take over.
Mm.
And for that, we don't want you to be the president of that, because they were bribed by the English, breaking that federation in a different way. Of course, Boganda, they said he was died in a car accident, or whatever you want to call it. But I'm saying this to tell you that there were indeed Africans who were aware of this. The word neocolonialism came along, as soon as this system started to be created. Nkrumah, even Jean-Paul Sartre, and people like that started to say that this is the wrong way to go. And this is why Kwame Nkrumah was determined for unification, because he knew what would be the only way to get away from neocolonialism.
Mm. This is deep stuff right here, people. I mean, like, yes, this the kind of lectures that we are starting with, ending this year and starting with now. And you, in the combination of both, is saying if Africa has a political unification, that's the only way that we're going to beat neocolonialism. So people, we actually get it. Like one of the family members here said, so neocolonialism is actually a soft power method, but actually we never actually had any independence. It was just camouflage, mask
We
under
have
that.
we have independence. We have independence, but we don't have sovereignty.
What's the
Independence,
difference?
the independence is the capacity to exist legally as an entity on the international scene. This is why Cameroon can have an ambassador, can have a president, can have a seat at the United Nations. It's recognized as an entity
Mhm.
legally. It exists legally. Cameroon could go and borrow legally in the banks.
Mhm.
Cameroon could go and do this legally, you
Mhm.
know. So the Cameroon is recognized as a legal entity as long as, and if you want, the borders of Cameroon will be respected by all foreign powers, unless Cameroon is annoying the most powerful on this world, just like Gaddafi did. See, they leave you alone as long as you don't disturb them. So because legality, they say yes, you are legally existent. At the same time, the other component of independence is also you could choose your policies. This is why we have national assemblies. This is why we have government who wrote all kinds of policies for education, for this, for that, But what they don't have is the wherewithal to implement these policies, the capacity to implement these policies, regardless of what the rest of the world think. An example is right now, Israel, for example, going to Gaza, okay? Even though the sovereignty of Israel, I would say, is a borrowed sovereignty from the United States, yeah? But it is indeed sovereignty in a way, uh, that no African country has. No one could keep Israel from going wherever they want to go. Go to Gaza, go to where, go, They said, we're not listening to anybody. If it was Cameroon who was being invaded, or look at if it was Cameroon that was being told don't go there and goes there, you will see the NATO already circulating its planes and bombarding Cameroonians. So that's what is the difference. Independence is you have the liberty to choose your policies. You are recognized as an existing entity, but that is not enough for you to take control of your destiny. You have to have the capacity to implement those policies that you choose freely, regardless of what the rest of the world think. And you have to have the means to implement those policies in a way that is not going to break your back. So, yes, we are independent, but no, we're not sovereign. And this is why it's laughable when people concentrate, yes, government, we have to do democracy in Africa. Nonsense. There cannot be democracy in Africa. A country that is not sovereign cannot talk about democracy, because the essence of democracy is the power of the people.
Yes.
If the power is not there, how could it be of the people? If the power is in the hand of somebody else, how could it be the power of the people? So democracy is nonsense. What people confuse with democratization is enhancement of governance. Enhancement of governance. And governance of what? The crumbs left behind by imperialism. That's all that you could talk about in Africa. Yes, you could enhance how these crumbs are managed. I'm talking about political crumbs, and I'm talking about economic crumbs, like the little that we are left with to be able to manage. Yes, this you could enhance the governance, but enhancing the governance is not good for us, because it makes us think that the system is okay. While indeed, instead of enhancing the governance, the management of these crumbs, why do you have to be content with the crumbs when the cake, you are the one making the cake, and it is being taken right before your eyes? That's what a lot of African academic and intellectuals don't understand. Most of their activities are actually here to accommodate Africans to neocolonialism, to make them accept neocolonialism. Yeah, non-government, yeah, corruption, nonsense. The problem of Africa is not corruption, it's not bad governance. It is what we are governing that is the problem. We are governing crumbs left behind by imperialism because of the neo-colonial system, which is an economic exploitation system by foreign powers.
Professor Joomaay, honestly, you drive me down. I'm fearless, but I fear. Okay. you know,
There is nothing to
you're
fear,
making
but
it, you're making, you're making, you're making,
itself.
no, you're making some points, which kind of like is kind of like creating a sympathy on the leadership, which we are holding accountable, as if they like they have no muscles, as a matter of fact.
Well, the problem is not, see, Dr. Tata, we are taught in the Western school to think that the problem is our leaders. Everything is done for us not to question the system that these leaders are serving. All our energy is focused on the managers of this neo-colonialist system. They are only just pegs, pawns. They are not the root cause of the problem that Africa is having. They are used, but it's the system African intellectual, African intellectual are misguided in at least 80% of them. 80% of them are misguided. Instead of focusing on the system, neocolonialism, instead of saying, no, we do not want the crumbs anymore. We want the cake because we made the cake. The oven is here. The baker is here. The cake belongs to us. Let us give them the crumbs so that we could live in peace with them and keep the cake to ourselves. Because, Dr. Tata, if we were having the cake, corruption will be just a minor nuisance.
Yes, we won't even notice.
We
It's
will
like
even
bureaucracy.
notice.
It's like
Just like,
bureaucracy.
look at here in the US, talking about corruption. There hasn't been a more corrupt country than the United States. Until 1900, from 1789 to 1900, 1900, 1900, let me put it that way. From 17, late, for more than 120 years, the United States, the political parties, when a political party come to power, all the administration is replaced.
Mhm.
And you know why they replaced? Because anyone who is in administration have to decide, have to accept and sign or giving, spoilers to the party that broke them or the bosses of the party. Part of your salary, at least 1/3 of your salary, has to be given to the party and its bosses. What do you call that? Isn't that corruption? Business people, they hire, senators, they hire other people to work for them. Today you have the lobby system. What country is more corrupt than China? What country is more corrupt than Russia? Yet country is more corrupt than what they call the false, Asian tigers. You know, but did that keep them from developing? No, because they kept the cake and shared the crumbs with the people, others, so that they could keep, relationship with them, as well as they take, things from the others too. So, we have to understand it is not about individual.
Whew.
It's about a system. And the system is neocolonialism. The system is the inability for us to control our destinies, to choose our policies and implement them whichever way we want, regardless of the rest of the world think about them. To decide so that yes, the apotheosis of neocolonialism was seen in the structural adjustment programs, where the IMF came and say, oh yeah, you cannot have any more of these programs. Government, no, you can't build school. You cannot hire doctors. You cannot do this. You cannot do that. What country is independent if you tell them you cannot do that? What they want to do, So that's, but what the African intellectual did at that time was to buy into this idea that we need non-governmental organization to help manage government governance and all that nonsense. All of these intellectuals get given like four-wheel drivers, and they start to think that they are the world. Created all these NGOs, and the worst, Dr. Tata, was they are lured into this nonsense concept of human rights. The nonsense concept of human rights. Because in any of those countries, people don't defend human rights, they defend constitutional rights, which are in the Constitution, which are tailored to the culture of those countries. Human right is attached to nothing. You cannot sue somebody for violating your human right. but you could sue a government for violating your constitutional right, which is in the constitution. But
Yes.
African intellectuals are like, oh yeah, human rights, all of that stuff nonsense, you know. Because if you're pursuing human rights, you cannot, really work for political development. You work for political development when you are forcing government to respect the constitutional right and protect the constitutional right of their citizens.
Correct.
That's in the
Absolutely.
constitution. But human right is where? What constitution is this? You won't see all that stuff. No, you know. So political development based on that. So I'm just, in a nutshell, the African intellectual need to rethink some of the ventriloquist activities that they're doing with Western academics. They cannot continue to just, regurgitate what the academics in the West are saying to them. They have to go home and look at reality, see what is exactly hurting, instead of just, okay, wanting to be invited in conferences and saying just anything to please. This is why China is today focalized in getting African academics to go to China, give
Mm,
conferences, meet chief, meet this, meet that. Oh
mm.
yeah, I'm going to China. Yeah, I'm
And
going.
even
I'm invited.
teachers,
Even teacher,
even
I'm,
teachers,
I'm invited to
teachers.
China because that is part of the strategy of China to get its foot on Africa. Because these are the intellectuals. The intellectuals are the main enablers of neocolonialism. They are the main culprit of the maintenance of neocolonialism.
Professor Joomaay, I see why you always refuse me to call you by your title. You say, no, just call me brother. I mean, because
Yes,
these academic titles that kind of
it's
like
nonsense.
intellectualize
It's
personality,
nonsense.
actually, they are enablers, honestly speaking. That's a fact.
In any way you look at it, just look at it seriously. You know, they are the enablers of neocolonialism. They are the one who are actually pushing our people to accommodate. They are the one advising our leaders to follow the instruction of the IMF of these policies. Who was the main implementer of the structural adjustment program? Who was it? A Liberian sister who became later the president of Liberia and started to see the message he made there. Because we want glory, because we want to be invited, because we want to be recognized and quoted falsely, huh? Because we want, because we're not looking at our Africa. We're not putting Africa first. We are putting our pockets first or our vanity first,
Aish.
you know.
This truth is it's piercing like everything that we've been studying here on this Pan-African. I mean, like you're just downloading some facts because these are things we talk about: neo-colonialism, political unification, unity of Africa, Pan-Africanism. Of course, globally, we Africans do understand that everything that we want is just unity and to be able to have the power to make our decisions, control our minerals, decide how we want to live our life, whether we want to stay primitive or we don't want some spatial kind of technologies or whatever. That's all an average African understands as Pan-Africanism,
Mhm,
understands as African Union, understands as the presidents that are working for the unity or the organization of the unification of Africa, one Africa. That's just all an average African who
mhm,
has not been trained to sell out its people like these intellectuals that you're talking about.
mhm,
An average African whom this kind of class is calling them primitive, illiterate, hungry people, and
mhm.
they're the ones that know how to actually, use. I mean, being criminals against their own people.
Absolutely. I
Where
mean, the
did
hope
we
of
stop?
Africa,
How
the
did we
hope of
start?
the hope of Africa is lays in the hand of the unschooled Africans. The future of
Yes.
Africa, the Renaissance, African Renaissance, lays in the hand of those people because they are the less master. The intellectuals are hybrids, most of them wanting to be clowns of colonialists or the colonialists, sounding like French, behaving like French, thinking like French, acting like British and stuff. While if you go into the village, they are still in the African culture. So a united Africa will have to go to the villages in order for us to be able to have Renaissance because the intellectuals
Yes.
are lost. We are all lost, you know. Most of us cannot even speak our languages without like 50% of the word being in English or French or whatever, whoever our emulator. We try to please or try to look like, I mean, you see, it's funny because the French used to talk about évoluer. All of those, all of those, Maurice Amago, Fouet Boigny, Senghor, you have to act like a French. And that is not even demanded now. But the intellectuals seem like, they are still in there, you know, they are still in there, wanting to be French more than the French, wanting to be English more than the English, wanting to know, Hamlet more than the British instead of knowing Ngugi wa Chongo or Cheikh Hamidou Khan or Birago Job or Usman Sambel, you know. It's maddening. So I say to people, Dr. Tata, 75% of the forces that hold neocolonialism intact is the African intellectuals. 20% is in the hands of the foreigners. 75% is in the hands of the intellectual. They are the enablers of neocolonialism. And we have to look at ourselves in mirror and honestly look at ourselves in mirror and see, what am I doing? Am I an enabler of neocolonialism? Or am I really someone who is here trying to restitute the sovereignty of my people? We have to look at ourselves in mirror. In every single country, I tell you the story of a little bit of a Japan, the Meiji Restoration. 4 Japanese intellectuals were the major drivers of the Meiji Restoration, which led Japan to where it is now. And you know one thing that they said at that time? They said foreign direct investment is a killer of the Japanese development. We cannot accept foreign direct investment. Or if we have to accept it, it has to be regulated in such a way that most of the profit stays here. But you will see African economies, foreign direct investment. They don't even understand what this is. Capital is invested to get profit, and the owner of capital keep profit. If capital is foreign, then the profit is going to foreign. It's not going to stay home. Yes, foreign direct investment could create jobs, but it creates miserable people in a generation, slave people in a generation of the one who has invested that money. But yet our intellectual, the same thing that they did in the 1960s, 70s, import substitution industrialization. Yeah, you have to do import substitution industrialization. The intellectuals started to chant that. They didn't realize that there are intricacies there. In Senegal, many intellectuals are saying today, the Senegal government is having more than 50% of what is going to be coming from the oil exploitation. But that's nonsense. They don't tell you all the machinery, all the machinery, overfacturation of the machinery has to be bought at the imperialist country. It's not going to be made in Senegal. All the major managers of these things are from the foreign. So by the time, for every $100 invested in the exploitation of the oil, by the time we talk about profit, it's only probably $80 that $80 is already spent somewhere else. And you are sharing, yes, you're getting 50% or 60% of the $20 that remain. And you say, oh yeah, that's a victory. The intellectual don't even take the time to look at those little details and open them to the people. This is neo-colonialism.
That is neo-colonialism, my people. We're going to take a break because the second part is going to be really hot. Now, all of you, you're going to be drinking your water and minding your African business. Just in a while, we'll be right back with Professor Joomaay, who is spitting fire right here on the Pan African Daily TV. Professor James sends greetings and said, "He that comes today is the future." And he said it. He said, "Many prophets, great ones, are rising up, and he that comes today is the future." So we
Well,
thank you for being,
but tell him
and
that
please, just a
Prof,
break, just a break. When we come to in the second part, it's going to be about solutions to
Professor Small
what
is my
we,
inspiration too.
yes.
You know.
You are watching the Pan African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. So good. We are right back on the Pan African Daily, and we would be getting into the second part of this conversation. But I really just want to use this 5 or 1 second just to shout out to my beautiful community. I mean, this community today is like, like just kicking back into the essence of what we are all chosen and brought on this channel to do. The education of the African by the Africans for Africa is what we do on the Pan African Daily TV. We have to understand who are your leaders, who are your teachers, who are the ones that speak to you and you listen. Today we're beginning to get the energy. Yesterday I also want to thank all of you that were, if you did not watch the program of yesterday, please do. It was a very hyper topic as this one's. So we are moving into the era, like we say, action. We're moving into that uncomfortable areas that most of us, most people, most speakers have not been bold enough. We have been equipped for 2-3 years now on this Pan African Daily TV, and now we're taking we're taking it to the next level. And the next level is actually, coming out from all the areas to talk about those uncomfortable things, or those things that we used to think that are uncomfortable. Yesterday we talked about the challenge that we have in the diversity of religion, and how we are going to become, this dream of a united Africa, respecting each other and also empowering, our African spirituality that has been trampled upon. Today, we are talking about political unification as the bullet that is going to actually tear down neo-colonialism if we are all agreeing. We've just learned that the facilitators, the sellout of the so-called enablers and the facilitators, those that are always like the choo-choo-choo-choo in the ears of our leaders, claiming to be more important than any other African in the village. Today, you are learning the real warriors and the real leaders of this continent are found in the villages. Over to you, Professor Joomaay. It's a wonderful pleasure. As we go into the second half, we want to begin to touch on those small, small. I mean, you've massaged us, you've given us a heart attack, as I can say, honestly. Like, yes, you're breaking it and saying this is the way it has to be. Do you think that Africans are understanding? They are beginning to feel the truth and the pinch and beginning to realize we've been chasing the wrong angle.
Absolutely. Yes, we are. We have come to that. We have come to, indeed, the African people starting to realize that neocolonialism is a dead end for them. And many people, we see the signs, and many people misinterpret these signs. If you look at the coup d'etat in Mali, the coup d'etat in Niger, the coup d'etat in Burkina Faso, the Russian flags being waved, some intellectual thing that people are doing the apology of Russia. People don't care a bit about Russia. They hate neocolonialism.
Yes.
And they are looking a way out of that neo-colonial system. And Russia seems to be singing the song of being able to help them. But it's not Russia that they want, because if they really understood what Russia wants, they will be running away from Russia too. They don't want China, because if they know what China really wanted, it's after the surplus value that is keeping them in poverty, they would be running away from them too. They know
Absolute.
that they don't want to be Sisyphuses, going all the way to the top of the mountain and having to roll down that rock again. They don't want that. They are sick and tired of neocolonialism. They are sick and tired of seeing their country having all these resources and not being able to take advantage of these resources to give the youth opportunities. They are sick and tired of our governments not being able to manage what economists call the demographic dividend, meaning the differential between what the labor market could absorb, and
Yes.
how many people are coming into the job market.
Mhm.
The inability of our countries to manage that, pushing our youth into the hands of the terrorists, pushing our youth into the street, social disturbance, and all because they are frustrated, pushing our youth into the bottom of the Mediterranean, into the dunes of the Sahara. They are sick and tired of that. So, yes, the African youth is sick and tired of the system. And what system? Neo-colonialism. So the time is here. What some philosophers, political philosophers, call the objective and subjective condition for a systemic change, which means the time for a revolution is here. Because everyone knows that our countries cannot provide us with the basic promises of independence. Everyone knows that now, including the leaders themselves. Everyone knows that this system won't work, doesn't work for the majority of the people. People know that. And people are ready to do whatever it takes in order to get rid of that system. I don't want violence, because violence doesn't really bring real revolution. I want this to be through the ballots. Because you see, what we have independence. That means that we could choose our policies. That means that we could choose the leaders that we want. That means that we could choose the system we want. So we could vote to get Cameroonian people to mutualize some of the portion of the sovereignty of Cameroonian people with the Senegalese, the Malian, the Jamaican, the Barbadians. They could make that choice. Now, once they make that choice, then they create a federal government that will have the power to implement those decisions, regardless of what the imperialists think. It's as simple as that. That's all. The conditions are here to end neocolonialism. But who is missing? The intellectuals. The African intellectuals are the one failing their people. They are the one going to look into other reason why the youth is sick and tired. They are the one who think that Russia is that, because they want to be invited in Moscow. They want to be invited in Beijing. They are the one betraying their people. But the African people, the youth particularly, which is the majority, is ready for this revolution. Bloodless revolution, legal revolution, democratic revolution. Yes, the people are ready for that. But the African intellectuals are the problems. They are the problems. They need to get on board to accelerate the mutualization of these portions of sovereignty. Political unification doesn't mean anything else but let's manage together what we cannot manage individually by ourselves, while keeping control of whatever else we could manage by ourselves. That's what political unification means. Let's manage together. That's all it is. If I cannot manage something together by myself, why would I have a problem if I find two other people that I could, combine with and manage ours together beautifully? Why would I be resisting? The resistance comes from because the intellectuals are the one getting most of the crumbs left behind by the imperialists, making them be able to have nice houses, you know, have their children go to France and study,
Yes.
go somewhere else to study. The intellectual, they are the one, you know. And the obstacle today to African liberation is the African intellectual. Nothing else. Nothing else.
How do we get them? Who are they?
Well, how do we get them? By programs like yours, by having people who are coming to your program call on the African intellectual, their responsibility to the African situation. It's too easy to say it's friend. Yeah, it's the Europeans don't like us. Yeah, the Europeans are doing this crying over nonsense. It's too easy. Stop the crying. Take responsibility. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, what role am I playing in the maintenance of this exploitative system of my people? Why am I going to China on a conference? Why am I going to Moscow on a conference? Why am I going to the Sorbonne on a conference to talk about nonsense, homosexuality, and all that kind of things? That's not a priority for us. The priority for us is sovereignty. The priority is for us to be able to get our countries what economics call good rating, so that borrowing could be cheaper. The priority is for us to get our own money that is accepted by the rest of the world to pay for our debts and to buy products in the international market. Those are the priority, and that can only happen if we mutualize the management of the portions of sovereignty that give us that capacity. Not accusing, Macky Sall for being corrupt, not accusing any president that come in Senegal will not do much better than Macky Sall. Any
None.
president that come in Cameroon will not do much better than Paul Biya. Any
Yes.
president that come in Uganda will not do much better than Museveni.
Museveni. Mm,
Because it's the system.
it's a system.
It is a system. People take power in Mali. Yes, they are, sovereign. They are not sovereign. How could you be using the CFA and be sovereign? And in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Nigeria, as far as I know, they're still using the CFA. How is that sovereignty? How is that sovereignty? Nonsense. People have to stop, really thinking cheap. It's about a system that we have to overthrow. And Independence gives us the capacity to do it peacefully, legally, and democratically, with the involvement of the masses. The African intellectuals need to be educated. No, the African Union is not political unification, is nonsense. It's indeed the defeat of those who wanted political unification. African Union, the Organization of African Unity is indeed the product of the defeat of Kwame Nkrumah, who really wanted political unification. The people, I was telling in the beginning of the show that there are many forms of unionists.
Yes.
There
He
are
came late.
political,
I think, yeah, Lawrence
there,
came late. That's why he's asking. If he was
there,
in the beginning, yeah.
there are political unionists, there are economical unionists, and they are cultural unionists. The African Union is made up mainly of political unionists. And everything that the African Union has done so far is about economic unity, which is a nonsense without political unity. I give you 3 examples right now. The Lagos Plan of Action, 1980. Where is it? Nowhere. It was
What
replaced
was
by
Professor Joomaay, what was in the Lagos plan of
it
1980?
was
Because I
it
had
was
that article.
it
Hmm.
was a macroeconomic development plan for Africa. It was a macroeconomic, building road, building this, building that throughout the continent, African countries, building economically the continent. That was mainly the Lagos plan. But that plan was replaced by the structural adjustment program.
Hmm.
And you know what was the structural adjustment program was indeed forced on the African countries to pay, especially to Citibank, the money that that institution had lent them recklessly. They had plenty of petrodollars that they wanted to lend, and the African countries were takers, so they gave them all these petrodollars, knowing that they can't pay these debts. And when it came to the time of paying, there was no paying, so they forced them to the structural adjustment program, the IMF and the World Bank, which was structural adjustment facilities for the IMF. So the Lagos plan is dead. The Abuja Treaty, dead. NEPAD, dead. Because these are trying to put the horse before the cart. You cannot, Sheikh Anta Diop said it, Kwame Nkrumah said it, all the really people who are serious said you can't have macroeconomic plan without having political system that manages them.
Yes.
And what is now the new one is the Zeleka. Is the Africa Free Trade, Continental Free Trade, which is another nonsense. Because that is the worst enemy for African industrialization. Yes, it will create some jobs, but we don't want jobs. We want surplus value to stay at home. That's what we want, because it's surplus value that creates development. Job without surplus value staying at home makes you a slave of foreigners.
It's simple.
And that's
the more
what
you want, the more you pay.
Well, that's what the Africa Free Trade Continental Agreement is. It won't work because you have to have an entity to manage this, to manage the custom, to manage what is coming in, to distribute fairly things that are being and coming in and out. But you don't have that entity, and you want to have a thing like that. Europeans, when France could no longer manage its money, Italy, Greece, Spain, and all other countries, when they realized that they can no longer manage their money, they called Big Brother Germany. And Germany, you know what they said? They had to go to a Maastricht. They had to create a federal entity to manage the money.
Professor Joomaay, I cannot wait to have you in Germany. June. I can't wait to have you in Germany in June, because we're planning a tour to Berlin. This historical facts. Sometimes people need to we need to feel it. Like you say, we can be reparating to the continent. We can be saying we're going home to build home when the system in place is the way it is. Without some dislocation and fixing. I mean, I'm
You
just
see,
like,
Dr. Tata, even if I wanted to go to Senegal and do an industry there, I will be submitted to a borrowing rate that is superior to the borrowing rate of the Chinese, of the French, of the American. So I cannot create something that yes, for local consumption, maybe, but even for local consumption, I can't, because if I'm borrowing at 10% and my competitor is borrowing at 2%, 3% the most, 7% differential, I cannot make it up.
you can't. That's too much
That
crazy.
that means that I cannot really, even if I wanted today, to have a competitive something built in Senegal to create jobs so that the surplus value stays there. I can't. So how can I get the same rates than the Chinese, the same rates than the American, the same rates than the English, by having a credible government that could impose that kind of rate? And that can only be a united African state. Cannot be Cameroon, cannot be Nigeria, cannot be any one of those. It has to be a government that tells them this is the rate that you have to accept my borrowing in. You cannot tell me what is the rate that Citibank. You want to lend me money? I'll give you 2%. That's it. Finished. Done. If you don't want it, I'm going to borrow somewhere else. If you don't want it, you're not going to get anything here. My market is not available to you.
But what, for God's sake, is it that they don't think like this? I said, what, for God's sake, is somebody who negotiates to lose?
Well, because they don't have the power behind it. You see, Malcolm X made it something. He said they don't fear you because of you. They fear you because who is behind you. If you were the ambassador of the United African States speaking to a representative of the Citibank in New York, it will be a different tone than you will get if you are the Senegalese ambassador. They will laugh at you if you are the Senegalese ambassador. But they will tremble when you are the ambassador of the United African States. They will
I can't wait.
first try to corrupt you, and if they know that you are incorruptible, then they start trembling on their pens, and then they start to say, "Oh yeah, okay. So what about if we do it 4% then, from 10? And if you insist, okay, so let's agree, because your market's so vast, we can't afford to lose that market. 1 billion people. That's not a small market, and the resources that we have everything if we are together, but we have
Lithium,
nothing if we are
lithium.
separated. You know, you know, and that's what is at stake. You know, that's what is at stake. And you ask me, what do we do with African? We all have to be aware of what is our responsibility, is what is happening to Africa. We have
Yes.
to take our responsibility, and there need to be more lectures, more people. When I went to Yaoundé, I said this exactly to the Cameroonian intellectual. These people who are on the street are poor, it's your responsibility, it's your fault. Get them off the street, get them off of poverty. Stop going to China, stop going to Russia for nonsense. Organize your people, work for African unity, make Cameroon one of the members of the United African States, so that we could realize the founder of the idea of African unionism, which is Marcus Garvey, and who said that he could dream of an empire controlled by African people on which the sun will never set. Many people don't even think about what that means. It means that a united African state that expands from Mogadishu all the way to the Pacific Islands. Because there are African people in those islands that could be members of the United African State. And all it takes is to have intellectuals who know what time it is. It doesn't take more than 200 Cameroonian intellectuals to change the mind of the Cameroonian, to educate Cameroonian. It doesn't take more than 100 Senegalese. It doesn't take more than 1,000 Nigerians. Only a few intellectuals, because you're looking at the independent movement, it was not all the intellectual Africans who were there. It was only, a significant portion of them that came to that realization. It doesn't take everybody. It takes only a few of us, determined, focused, and focused to end neocolonialism, to put Africans in touch of resources that could lift them from poverty by the transformation of their resources. Everyone say we are Africa is rich. We are not rich, we are poor. We are dirt poor, but we are filthy rich in resources. But resources, you don't eat resources. you don't sleep in resources. You don't travel on resources. You transform those resources in something, that create wealth. You travel on wealth, you sleep on wealth, you eat wealth. Yeah. It's just the intellectual Africans. We have to understand the African Renaissance is fundamental. And
Yes.
we intellectuals have to play a leadership role in this.
Yes.
We have to play a leadership role in this. When I'm talking about African intellectual, James Small is an African intellectual as much as Cheikh Anta Diop was an African intellectual. Marcus Garvey is an African intellectual as much as Kwame Nkrumah was an African intellectual. I'm not differentiating. When I say African, I mean every African of the blood and of the soil. Particularly African of the blood, which means black people. Particularly us, because our security, our respect around the world is tied to Africa. But the white South Africans respect, North Africans respect white. Their respect around the world is not tied to Africa.
Oh,
It is
we
not
have to
tied to
start.
Africa. So Africa, this is why Ali Mazrui call us Africans of the blood.
Aye.
As long as Africa will be in a disarray, in a mess, absent in the world geopolitical map, as long as that, we will not be respected. And Malcolm X said this. They don't fear you for who you are. They fear you for what you have behind you. We are elephants that are lamenting about a little mice, creating problems for us because we are lethargic,
It's just piercing. It's just, I don't know. I don't know, but I'm so happy. I'm really, I don't know people, and I see you in the chat group, Cheryl, Leo, Marshall, Kalena. I'm telling you, Africana Swahili TV, Last Born Crew. I mean, hey, Kofi, I see all of you. The spirit, it's there. It is the time. It's like now. It's like, oh my goodness.
You see,
Professor Joomaay.
Dr. Tata, this is why we created the Pan-African Fellows Movement too. You see, I want to just share that with you because people have to understand also where do we go from here. You see, we don't want people to leave their organization. Keep your organization. But let all these organizations come together in a Congress that want African unity. Let us all come together and say how we're going to do it together while keeping our individuality as organizations. This is why we're calling for a first Pan-African Federalist Congress. But everyone wants to keep to themselves. No, The Pan African Federalist Movement is not even an organization; it's an enabler for a gathering.
That is why I wanted to ask, what is that? I mean, you were here on the show, but I mean, this fire that I feel in you, I know you were still putting the structures even before we lost one of your members last time.
Baba
But
Jiwe.
yes, and I know you already had this plan, and we'd be talking even in the background about it. But this is time to actually light the fire, and if we had our United African Kingdoms, I mean, Pan African Daily TV would have been the major media, even though it is on its own.
Absolutely,
Whether it's
absolutely,
recognized or not, we recognize as the
absolutely,
only trusted media source that gives it
absolutely,
the way it is in the interest of
absolutely.
Africa
Because
by
you know
Africa.
what time it is. You know what time it is, Dr. Tata, and that's why I admire about you. You know what time it is. You know, and we need to know what time it is. The time it is the time for a change is right. You see, when they were talking about the American Revolution, the first president of Princeton University, John Witherspoon, they were discussing the time is right for a revolution, the time is right for independence. John Witherspoon, who just came from Scotland and stuff, said to them, the time is not ripe, it's rotten. It's past right. It is rotten now. Get out of your back before it disappears. The time for a systemic change is rotten today. You know, you know. Let's
So, I mean,
come together and have a plan on how to go about getting these countries mutualize some of the portion of sovereignty that they cannot manage. And that's all what the Pan African Federalist Movement is calling. We're not an
when I,
organization as per se. We're not competing with anyone else. We just everyone want everyone to talk to everyone in the same room and make a decision, take a plan of action, and decide on how we are independently going to be functioning while having a campaign machine put together that we will all nourish. We keep our independence while having a common campaign machine to get our countries to become members of this union.
we love you so much. What are we looking forward at right now as we speak? Because you like, I know we talked about that in a continental meeting of this federals, but you wanted to put the different regions or the different countries into action first. So
Absolutely.
what are
You
we
see,
looking at right now? What is the action plan like after now, tomorrow? What
well, the
should we be
action,
doing?
well, what I suggest for people to do today is really because the Pan African Federalist Movement has a commission that is in charge of reaching out to Pan African organizations, meaning diaspora organization. We have also a commission that is reaching out to continental African organization
Mhm.
in order for them to be invited at this Congress. But at the same time, what we're doing also is that we know that it's countries that will become members of the United African State. So we have to have a coalition in Cameroon, a coalition in Senegal, a coalition of Mali, regardless of the political leaning of the party. Parties in government, parties in opposition, everyone. Let's create a coalition nationally of Cameroonians who want African political unity, and let's go to the Congress and discuss with the Senegalese coalition, the Malian coalition, the Zimbabwean coalition, the Jamaican, Barbadian coalition, the Haitian coalition, the American, African American here, the Canadian coalition. Let's all form this coalition and then go and get together. You see, we don't want at the Pan African Federalist Movement, Dr. Tata, is a talk box where you're going to
Yes.
have intellectuals coming, everyone thinking that he is the Illuminati of Africa. He is the one without whom Africa will be a miserable mother. No, we don't want that.
That's what I wanted to say. How do you want to guarantee that we're not going to get these nosy intellectuals just come and hijack like they hijack? I'm
That
telling you, no,
because
this
that's
is the
that's
problem,
exactly
Professor
that's
Joomaay.
exactly that. So see, I was at the Pan African Congress in 1994 in Kampala. I
Mm-hmm.
stayed there 2 days and I left because I was fed up. I couldn't take it anymore. you you know, because I see people, self-aggrandizement, oh yeah, I am this, egomaniac all over the place, you know, playing like, they are messiahs and all of that stuff, you know, going into resolution to condemn, resolution to do resolution. Where is the action plan? Well,
Absolute.
as a last thought, so
Absolute.
the way that we are organizing is that you cannot just come to the Congress. You have to come to a national coalition.
Yes.
So that the coalition is going to be speaking on behalf of the organization that are members. We don't want your intellectual acumen.
You're
If
me
you
and
want,
me, myself, and I.
yeah, if you want, you have to go through your national coalition and come.
I this sounds like a plan, honestly. I think all of us are beginning to dream and wake up again. Because like it was like, what now? Yes, we woke, we are struggling
You
to be
see,
awake, as a matter
you
of
see,
fact, but
there is
what
what
now?
we
We had the rapid
there.
African plan, we
uh,
had the organic African plan, we had the everything, like we
you
had
see,
the
the the,
ADDA
the,
plan,
the
we
Pan
had the
African the Pan African Fellow Movement have been studying this question of unity for a long time. This is why we have what we call the corridor to victory. What we call the corridor to victory.
yes,
What is the
I
corridor
agree.
to victory? It is West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa.
Mhm.
We're not saying that we're ignoring North Africa or Southern Africa. No, we're not saying that. But we're saying the most fertile ground for African unity ideas are those three regions because of the history. In West Africa, you had the effort of Senghor and Modibo Keita, Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré.
Mhm.
You had those. And there are people, and then Sankara and all of that. In Central Africa, you had the effort of Barthélemy Boganda, Lumumba, Milton Obote, and a brilliant academic from Cameroon, Osede Afana, who is my idol of all of them, you know, you know, brilliant, brilliant, you know. And then in East Africa, you had also the Nyerere, you had the Milton Obote, and all of those people. So these people, you know, planted seeds that have given trees today, that have grown and have fruits. This is why the youth in those regions is very determined in African unity, because they are the fruits of the trees that those people planted. This is
Sure.
why we said that this is the corridor to victory.
Absolute.
And if you're looking at it, if today all the countries, because you're going to have not only a continuous union, a continuous entity, but
Mm,
a viable entity that could attract others. And I'm sure
mm.
that countries like Algeria, Zimbabwe, others will easily come, Mozambique and Angola, I mean, all of, they will easily come and join the union.
That's so fact.
You know, this is why we call the corridor to victory, the corridor to victory. You know,
Yes.
you know, and that we are working on making sure that these three regions, and this is why I was in Central Africa
Mm-hmm.
to visit all those countries where there is a lot of enthusiasm. And I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to tell you just something, okay? I met with government, leaders in these countries, and we told them that we are not against you. We have nothing against you. What we are against is neocolonialism. What is keeping you from being able to serve your people? That's what we are against. And I explained to the Minister of Foreign Affairs the representative of Minister of Foreign Affairs in Chad. I told him, look at your most hard opponent in your country. You have less contradiction with him than you have with the imperialist. You have much more reason to be with him and work with him for Chad to become a member of the union, so that you, if you have a political and economic program, educational program, you could have the resources to implement this. So you have more in common than you really have in a difference. This is why the PAFM does not interfere in domestic politics, because we know that it's the contradiction is not between us. The main impediment to our development is not the difference between us. It is the difference between us and the imperialists in their form of system of exploitation, which is neocolonialism. Neo-colonialism is the real impediment. It is not governance, which some people misinformed call democracy. Democracy, you can't have democracy if you don't have sovereignty. That's nonsense.
I want to thank you, thank you, I just want to recognize the presence of Professor Baina, Queen of Haiti, in our midst, and I mean, he's been throwing greetings to you, Doc, and like, you know, but the energy is just tapping all of us as everyone is just waking and coming back, because this sounds like a rescue plan, to be honest with you. This
Haiti,
sounds like a rescue plan. Like if you were talking to a leader and it's like, no, please don't think that it's against, you know.
you see, Dr. Tata, you talking about
Yes,
Haiti. This is why people talk about the African Union is a Pan-African organization. You cannot be more misinformed in saying that. The African Union is not a Pan-African organization. It's a continental African organization.
yes,
Because if it was a Pan-African organization, the only republic that was a Pan-African republic is Haiti, and there is
yes.
none. Haiti was the only Pan-African republic, because as long as you're a black, automatic you become a citizen of Haiti. There was the only republic that the identity, and the citizenship were the same.
Till today.
African Union is not a Pan-African organization. It's a
Oh no,
continental
no, 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 no,
African
no. That
organization.
we know.
That's why. But I hear some intellectual, and even though some of the writing of the African Union, they said, yeah, Pan-African organization. Nonsense. You know.
So that makes a lot of sense. Why, if we really cherish some of these leaders, for us to be saying that we need them. You see the reason why, at sometimes when we were really like still being too emotional, and we're like, oh no, Professor Pielo, Dr. Arikana, oh, they have to sit, on the chair of the African Union. Like you just say, the NS word.
African Union is not the way for us. You see, the African Union is an intergovernmental organization. It's an intergovernmental, and when you talk about intergovernmental organization of government that have a negative sovereignty, meaning that they have no sovereignty, how could you? You are toothless. And many people are amazed by why the African Union doesn't do this. Why yeah, because it's an intergovernmental organization of negative sovereignties, non-sovereign countries. And the difference between a United African State and the African Union will be indeed that the United African State, the federal government, will be a sovereign one, because it will indeed have the size, the resources in order to be a sovereign state.
Something is just hitting my heart, because we are going to get into the part two of the Haiti celebration, which we started already with Professor Baina, and she will be coming on the show. I would say the date in the coming weeks, because in the coming days, as we look forward to celebrate the phase two, we're also going to get Professor Kaba Kameni, who is also coming on the show. I mean, a lot of these powerful teachers and the intellectuals that we are looking to to be the ambassadors that are leading the federal movement while they begin now to detox the others and just like, you see, that's the way this one man thing, one myself, me, myself, and I is not working, would never work. Keep your institution and your organization, but let's figure out this thing, how
Let's
we
get
can get
together and
together.
speak. Let's have a plan together. Keep your organization, but let's get together and speak. We are all holding on to carcasses that don't do anything. We have organizations that have been here for 100 years, for 50 years, 20 years, and we are still screaming, oh yeah, they hate us. I don't care if you hate me. That's not my problem. You hating me? I don't care. What I hate is, do I have the power to survive on my own?
That is it.
Despite of what you think of me. I don't care
Yes.
about, countries, and this is the problem with African intellectuals sometimes. They don't understand that countries don't have feelings. Countries don't have feelings. They only have interest to protect. This is why they call the reason of state, raison d'etre in French, to give that heartless, feelingless, sentiment a sense. This is why they say it could kill you, for the reason of state. So if we're looking for, yes, France doesn't hate or like us. England doesn't hate or like us. America doesn't hate or like us. America has no feeling. It's not an individual. It's a country. It has interests to protect, and it will do anything to protect those interests. Countries don't have friends, and I can see African countries, oh, the French is a friend of... There is no friendship in countries. Anyone who did a first trimester in international relations will tell you that there's no sense. There's no friendship between countries. But we Africans, because of our humanism, which is good, we are always looking at the sentimental side of things. No, there's no sentiment between countries. Power. If you don't have power, you are nothing. That's it.
I'm so sorry.
Countries respect other countries. They respect them because they know the impact of their anger, of the anger of their leaders on their national interest.
This is
Countries
so
have that,
true.
But besides that, you tell, yeah, la France a été notre ami pendant des siècles, oui, la francophonie, n'importe quoi, all the nonsense, Let's talk about neocolonialism. Haiti has been bewildered by the impossibility of our development. But Haiti in a united African state will certainly be a diamond in the Caribbean. And every single Haitian must work for Haiti to join the United African States, for Haiti to be represented at the first Pan-African Federalist Congress.
Yeah, but
Because
you have to join us in the celebration, Professor Joomaay. I'm already putting a list because I'm talking to, as we get on to the second celebration of Haiti. I mean, I want us to really put it on the map. Last time we just did a symbolic. It was not really like, but now we're getting into the second half, and we'll be getting even into the third part because, like, exactly what you're saying, Haiti is the first ever. I mean, freedom land.
And the only Pan-African country.
And the only Pan-African country.
Only. There hasn't been a second.
Shout out to Mama Bello. Honestly, Professor Baina, chapeau. And even no matter what
many people shall know also the inspiration of Sheikh Anta was Haitian intellectuals.
Okay.
The inspiration about Egypt was Haitian intellectuals. Haiti has played a role.
It's easy to see. It is very easy. It's evidence to see. Look at Professor Baina, an intellectual bet has been on it for, you don't even know, you know, until you begin to like, these are people that are speaking for the
Absolutely.
nation with their blood and life and
and
everything.
and there is a thing that also you see a lot of people like Frederick Douglass. Okay, Frederick Douglass. One of the few Pan African sentiment that he developed was that when the U.S. was planning on invading Haiti,
Hmm.
and Frederick Douglass said, "No, that's a black country. I'm not going to let that happen." He gave them the plan, which foiled the plan of the U.S. to attack and invade Haiti, because he felt that this is a Pan African black people's country. You know? So I mean, has everything, but Professor Bello, and all of those, I cannot personally see a united African state without Haiti or Jamaica,
Yes,
because the first person, the founder of African Unionism is
I
Martin
agree.
Garvey.
I'm
And the
agreeing with all,
first,
I'm agreeing with everything in me. I
absolutely,
agree.
absolutely, and we must work together. We must stop thinking about, stop being colloquial. My little organization, my little. Bring your organization in confrontation, in collaboration with the other organization. Come to the first Pan African Federal Congress, because everything that you're saying in your agenda in your organization cannot happen if the Africans don't hold a sovereign power in their hands. Reparation will not happen unless we have a sovereign power in the hands of Africans. It's not going to be, in the court of England. It's not going to be in the court of the U.S. It's not going to be what you call it, a law passed by the U.S. Congress. That's nonsense. It's not going to happen. It will be negotiated by a united African state. And if you really want reparation of the wrong that were done to Africans by colonialism and slavery, work for a united African state, because power is only the thing that speaks. Only power speaks. Only power speaks. Nothing else when it comes to countries.
We have 9 minutes into the conversation, people, and this has been 2 hours of actually hitting, I mean, we've been icing the cake, but now we just, and we'll be moving on this series with Professor Joomaay and all the other PAM. I'm talking about Pan African Federalist movements. I just happen to be in all the groups, though. Of course. But African Daily is in all the groups, so I get all the newsletters and I see the evolution. And honestly, but the way you have broken up the main disease, I mean, taking us, derailing us from, not derailing, but taking us back to the channel, like you say, navigating, identifying the corridors, how we used to move. Because now we were just like, we were saying it the other day, we're just moving, like we just scattered, like we don't even know what is the way home, which direction are we taking, you know, like the Harriet Tubman that had to call all of them, hold all of them, put some in the boats, those that were running
Absolutely.
in the fields. That corridor, like you're saying, that
Absolutely.
direction is what we're
Absolutely.
getting at right
You
now.
see, Dr. Tata, the biggest joy that the imperialists have is when African intellectuals talk about corruption in Africa. They love it.
Yes, and the need
They,
for good governance.
and the need for good governance. Oh wow, that's it, good. At least they accept to share to only focus on the crumbs, and they're happy, and they finance these people to go and talk about what the imperialists want us to talk about. They make their big names, and all of that nonsense. You know, they they feign, they make look like they're creating problem for our people, criticizing the African government. Yes, they want people to criticize the African government, because as long as we focus on criticizing the African government, then we are not talking about changing the system, ending neocolonialism.
This is so correct. This is so true because it's in my. I'm like, oh, Distraction of the biggest order. Our brother or our son, um, um, it just asked, where is our silver plate that we hit 100,000 subscribers on the Pan African Daily? And Firstborn was just saying, where is our silver plate? And I love it. That's why I flanked it to this. But I want to remind all of us, if we were entertaining on the Pan African Daily, like exactly what you're saying, or here to talk about corruption, talk about how our leaders, are misleading their people, and all these things, I'm telling you, we would have had that. We would have had million subscribers on the Pan African Daily and with golden plates all over. But I want to assure you, this family here, that that's not our focus.
Absolutely.
Because nobody is worthy enough to give us a recognition.
Absolutely.
We don't even take it. We don't take
Absolutely.
no awards, no funding. If it's not from us, it's not better.
Absolutely.
That's a fact. Until
Absolutely.
we really start refusing all these crumbs, like Professor Joomaay is saying, we're leading crumbs and we're happy all the time about it. A $1 that comes from us is more than a billion that somebody will just sit somewhere and want to distract. Do you know what that means? Even giving us a plate is owning our voices already. Giving us the 100,000 subscribers is already like, now I recognize you that you are this. No, nobody can recognize us. We are
Mhm.
ourselves. We
Absolutely.
recognize ourselves. And
Absolutely.
like I said, no funding, no nothing, no
Absolutely.
program. We've been
Absolutely.
disabled from everything. We can't even receive support. I mean,
Absolutely.
members
I,
that have been sending us small,
absolutely.
$5, $1 here. Now, even when they send the money, it doesn't even get to us again because they've disabled everything so that they can choke out. But you know what? It's so good for anybody in the African proverbs that say, if the people that actually hate you are the people that love you the most.
Mm-hmm.
People that in this sense that we are talking about, this kind of hate, like, oh, they hate us, that's why they're disabling us. No, they're doing us the right thing.
Exactly. Exactly. You see, why not just also say, Dr. Tata, about Pan Africanism, okay? And we probably will do a program. We could do a program on this. Any person who claims to be a Pan Africanist and is only focused on criticizing African leaders is a reactionary.
Yes.
Because Pan Africanism is not about the contradiction among us Black people. It's about the contradiction between us and those who deny us our humanness, our sovereignty, our dignity. It is not against about us fighting. We will fight. Yeah, we can have contradictions. But Pan Africanism is not about the contradictions among us. It's about the contradiction between us and the outsiders who transform us into slaves, colonize us, and are maintaining neocolonialism. Pan Africanism is about sovereignty. If you're looking at throughout its history, from when it was called the colored people movement, I'm sorry, the Negro movement, the Negro conventions, the colored people convention, and then become Pan-Africanism. It has always been about sovereignty. It have always been about the restoration of the dignity of Black people. So it has never been confusing for it to be it's a contradiction between Black people and others. But others are paying people who pretend to be Pan-Africanists to distract us. To say, oh yeah, these leaders, they are no, they all that nonsense. That's reactionary Pan-Africanism. That's infantilist Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is about the restoration of our sovereignty and dignity and nothing else. And throughout its history, it has always been that. It did not always have the name of Pan-African. It was first called the colored people, the Negro Convention. Then it became the colored people after the compromise, the Fugitive Slave Act. You know, then it's only towards the end of the 19th century that it became Pan-African, the word Pan-African become the one that they use for that particular thing, the concept, you know. But we have people running around, yeah, those leaders are corrupt. We Pan-African is that? Yes, you are. You don't know what Pan-African is. That's why you're saying that. What you should say is that we Africans should restore our sovereignty. This is the fight for the people of our century. Today, Pan-Africanism is about fighting to end neocolonialism and nothing else. And that can only happen through political unification.
Wow. Is it also right, Professor, to say even those organizations, Pan-African organizations that are running under the umbrella of Pan-African or Pan-Africanism, if they would not come under this umbrella of Pan-African federalist movement with this agenda that we know exactly the direction, that's also a problem,
Well,
isn't it?
well, I mean, it is a problem, but we are at the Pan-African Federal, we are patient. You see, we are patient. We are building national coalitions, and we are focused on the youth. We really focus on the youth because we know that the change is going to happen in Africa is going to be through the youth.
Mm.
It's going to be through the youth because the youth, if you see what happened in Mali, what happened in Burkina Faso, what happened, people coming, like I said in the beginning, Russian flag doesn't mean that we want Russia to be the new neo-colonizer. It means that we're fed up with friends.
Mm.
We are fed up with friends, and friends for them is neo-colonialism. It's just the name, you know. That's what it really is, you know. Exactly. Yes, that is true, Professor. Exactly. That's what I was referring, my sister. Exactly. You are absolutely right. It was Antoine Firmin. Absolutely, his work. Yes, absolutely. That's what I
She
was
knows
referring to.
everything. Professor Bello knows everything. I'm telling you. This queen here.
Yeah. We need her to get Haiti on board for this union because Haiti is not going to develop as a singleton entity. Haiti has to lead us to the creation of a united African state. It led
Ashe.
us to the end of slavery. It has to lead us to the end of neocolonialism. We are looking for Haiti for that. Haiti cannot and should not shy away, Professor Bello, from its responsibility because you taught us that you better be free than leave.
Hmm.
How many Haitians died, for to end slavery, to beat Napoleon? How many? How
Hmm.
many?
Hmm.
You know, and they were
I'm
an
loving
inspiration.
this. I mean, can somebody feel this spirit in this
They
place
were
here?
the inspiration, and they
Woo.
should continue to be the inspiration. And Professor Bello, you have a responsibility because you are one of the most enlightened in Haiti.
I'm
You
telling
shall
you, they want
bring
standing.
Haiti.
They want
Yeah.
standing. They
You
want
must,
standing.
you must
Oh,
bring Haiti to the United African State and through the Pan-African Federalist Movement.
to lead us.
Yes, yes. At least you see Haiti, what it gives us, it gives us comfort. It gives us comfort. It makes us feel that our mother is with us. That's what Haiti. Jamaica give us a comfort. It makes us feel our father is with us.
Hmm.
Because all of us who are fighting for what we're fighting today, a child of Haiti, a child of Jamaica, has been at the forefront, has been at the trailblazer of this path that we're taking today.
And the spirit of these ancestors are there.
Absolutely,
The spirit of these ancestors are
absolutely.
there. That's why I
And you
love
see,
when
you see,
Professor.
you see, there is another thing here also that Pan Africans should know. When we're talking about the first Pan African Congress in 1900, a lot of people don't realize that it was organized mainly by three people: two Haitians and one Trinidadian.
Come on, tell us now. Tell us. What is it that you don't know?
Antonin Firmin, was one of the main organizers of that Congress. And it was a celebration of the Adwa victory of 1898. He actually, I mean, Haiti was represented at the Congress. Ethiopia was represented at the Congress. It was too Haitian because, Sylvester William had an organization. They leaned on that organization, but the initiative was not really him. It was mainly a celebration of the Adwa victory. So Haiti play a really, really great role in everything that we do.
Now, the spirit of our great warrior, Emperor Dessalines, is still with us, and Queen.
And exactly,
So
the other person
exactly,
was the other person that I didn't name was Dessalines. Dessalines, Antonin Firmin, and Sylvester William were the three main organizers. And the access to facilities and all of that was to the Ethiopian government, through Dessalines, who represented Haiti and Ethiopia. Mainly him.
to be honest with you, I think the opposite of what we always have been thinking. I mean, this is what Pan African Daily TV followers, particularly on Facebook, keep dropping and saying. Africa, nobody is at war with us. We're at war with the world, and they're
Absolutely.
fighting from different fronts. And I even saw a comment that one person wrote today, and we shared it, and like, even the situation in the Middle East, something is about the blacks in in Israel and Palestine, has nothing to do with the conflict right there. And I was like, okay, you know, opinions, and Africans are beginning to actually like repositioning and acknowledging the fact that if they are not fighting us in Haiti, they're fighting us in America. They're fighting us in like really now. But that gives us the power to understand that we're just everywhere.
Mhm. We are. But we are nowhere at the same time. When it comes to power, we are nowhere. When it comes to physical presence, we are everywhere. When it comes to resources, we are underground and everywhere. Because you cannot get up in England without using something from Africa throughout your day.
Yes.
We are everywhere.
Anywhere.
But when it comes to power, we are nowhere because we are under
Divided.
neocolonialism. We are under neocolonialism. We are divided. And this was created. This was, yeah, it's Benito Silva. Yes, yeah, yeah. We are divided. You know, we are divided and made powerless.
She knows everything.
Absolutely, Benito Silva, effectively. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Baina.
I'm telling you, yeah, Professor Baina. I mean, honestly, when we'll be doing the other series on celebrating Haiti, I think Haiti has to, just like the Pan African movement and this topic on neo-colonialism, teaching this political and empowering us on the way forward. I think Haiti, Jamaica, and from the Marcus Garvey movement, his son, Dr.
Yep.
Julius Garvey, is
Yes,
also scheduled in the next 2 weeks. He's also going to be
it will
our
be
guest,
wonderful.
and he is also signed to be a permanent guest, on the Pan African
Excellent.
Daily, with the daily series, also like Professor Bello. And it has to
Absolutely.
2024.
Mhm.
hmm,
We
I
have
think
to.
we'll get there.
We have to get moving, get going.
Thank you
But
so much, Professor. I don't want to keep you for so long. Can you
thank
just wrap
you.
it up while we yeah.
Well, I mean, I want to thank you, Dr. Tata. It has been really a pleasure having a conversation with you. And I want to first, if I hurt some people, feelings, I apologize. But if I had to say it, I had to say it again because the interest of Africa comes before anything for me. You know, the hunger, the hopelessness I've seen in Cameroon, in Chad, in Congo. in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and I say in Senegal and all of those countries, that hopelessness of the youth is really making me sleepless and restless. As an intellectual, I feel responsible. Ask me a question at the Congo, at the Democratic Republic of Congo television. They asked me, "What will you say to the African youth that is going into the desert and the Mediterranean?" I said, I have nothing to say to them, but say to them, I am sorry. I am sorry. I should have created a condition for you not to have to go there. It's my responsibility. It's my fault. I said, you won't tell them to stay here. I said, what do I have to offer them? I don't have anything to offer them. I have more to apologize to them than to blame them. It's me who must be blamed. It's
But
us, their elders, who
that's
must
also
be blamed.
another distraction, Professor,
Yes,
right there.
exactly. You know,
Like
and
instead of
mm, yeah,
yes,
yeah. So I want to thank you, Dr. Tata. I want to thank all of the people who have listened, and please, this is a conversation between brothers and sisters. We have to just focus on, on the main thing, which is ending neocolonialism. Ending neocolonialism for the good of all African people of the blood, meaning Black people. Because we have Africa, we cannot run away from Africa. Africa determines our security and our well being, our dignity. So we have a first interest in this. Continue the work, Dr. Tata. Dr. Bello, thank you very much for that correction regarding Benito Silva. Indeed, it was Benito Silva. And thank you very much all. Forward for the end of neocolonialism. Stop criticizing the imperialists. Stop criticizing, stop blaming the imperialists. It is us, the African intellectual, who must look at ourselves in the mirror and say, Abana, enough is enough. Let's take our responsibility. Thank you.
thank you so very much, Professor. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. We're going to talk after the or
Okay.
behind to schedule the next
Okay.
session with you. Thank you. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
But
you.
I want you to read this comment before you leave. Just this one that just came in now. And I was also about to say the same thing, but I would like to bring it here.
Thank you, Lazarus. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that support. Thank you.
Good
Thank you.
night. Good night, Professor. Good night. Thank you so very much. Wow. So coming next on Pan African Daily TV, like I said, I mean, we're going to have a host of guests, and Professor Bello is already here. We're going to get into the next series of celebrating Haiti and its achievement and the road to Pan Africanism. Bear you with me. We had no conversation, me and Professor Joomaay, on this topic. As you see, it's just given. It's not a coincidence that he's just saying it, because sometimes we give credit always on the continent. Sometimes we refer to the continent always as mother continent. But Professor James did warn us and say, stop this diaspora continental thing, because Africa is everywhere. Mother Africa is everywhere. People that have bled for this continent is everywhere. So Mother Africa is not just the continental when we set our feet there. Haiti is a clear example. Jamaica is a clear example. Trinidad, Tobago, Antigua, Barbuda, all the spaces where our people, African American society, I mean, like, you know, don't say any did not call this or that, or that. You understand what I mean? And so we take it really seriously. That's why we pin that particular conversation of Professor James on the Pan African Daily. Once you enter into this door, you know, on our YouTube channel, it's plain there to say we have to stop even the division of saying we on the continent and we in the diaspora. That's already, and that's exactly what Professor Joomaay is saying today, to say, no, if we have to navigate the corridors, if credit has to be given. So aren't we even thinking that's why this unity is not really working, because we keep giving credit where it doesn't belong? The people that bled and died and set these structures, when something is happening in Haiti, the so-called, as we're saying, the African Union, basically, I mean, from what Professor Joomaay just said, you could already see the positioning. And we were dancing in between, ignorantly, like, we just love Africa. We want one Africa, but actually didn't even know which way are we going in this boat. We're just turning and spinning around, right? But today is a clear call. Even though Professor Bello has been here all the time talking, teaching us about the revolution of IT. I think it needed a Professor Joomaay and all other intellectuals, like he's saying, to begin to speak to speak the fire on where it began, who actually were the saviors, who actually paved everything that to put us where we are today before we even start getting confused. Most of the time we said, oh no, it's because the forefathers and foremothers on the continent, forefathers did not apologize because of slavery and that. When they got here, and I said something, and I'm still really going to back on Professor Bello for us to have this conversation. Who were those that were captured from the continent? You can do your research. Who actually were the ones that were captured? Because history, not our story, history is telling us some things that it's they came to look for enslaved or captured slaves to go and work in their villas with pregnant women and kids. Who would come to a slave market, or they were looking for slaves and buy a pregnant woman? Who were these that were captured? That's why all our kingdoms and our artifacts are in the diaspora, because they were the kings, the original indigenous kings that were captured with their families and the unborn kings and kings. So actually the kings and queendoms are in the diaspora. These are ours that are crying back. And if we don't fit these pieces together to recognize, to come together, to give credit where it is, we wonder. I might disagree a lot about the theory of which God we worship or whatever. There is, even in our 42 laws of Ma'at, justice. And I think we can turn around and like, that's why I just love what Professor Joomaay was saying. We can turn around and talk about petty things. Oh, they hate me because of the color of my this. So what? What does that give? Because of my kinky hair, look at bushy and wild, and oh no, they hate me because my nose is not as because my and so what? Is that paying my bills, feeding my children? So it's been enough of distraction talking about, yes, those things. And we begin to justify them all the time. We even forget and even put ourselves and even accept the fact that, oh no, we are in a trauma, we are in a sickness that like we agree, even the stampede on us. No. Kings and queens. Professor James said one thing last night. We never even had chiefs. All these ones called chiefs are the colonial chiefs. And Professor Joomaay said it. Because we were kings and queens. We never had a word for chiefs. All these paramount chiefs, whatever. Okay. Anyways, tomorrow we are definitely going to have Dr. Tony Jaja. And he wants to share with us his Congo experience. He was in Congo and he discovered a lot, like being a correspondent or a speaker on the Pan African Daily. We talk a lot about even the issues that we don't know because we are one, we just know it. Ambassador Tony Jaja is the peace ambassador for East and what? Yes, East and Ost of Africa. We know him. We know Tony Jaja. But he went to Congo for the first time and discovered something so unique and special that has never been spoken about. And so he's going to be our guest tomorrow. And we're going to have another powerful, educative, informative, involvement session. But please, like I said, set the date. I'll be announcing when we're getting into the part 2 of the Haitian celebration. And please, we need to contribute. not. We just watched the celebration, everything that was doing. So come prepared when I'll be sending out the date. So thank you so very much. I mean, it has been a very empowering. I'm so inspired. Like, whew, I can't wait. Today is the day where we were saying, which direction are we taking? And now we are on the safe side to understand where is the problem, what we should be focusing on. So we see ourselves tomorrow. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Professor Bello. Thank you, all of the professors here. These are the intellectuals that are actually, that Professor Joomaay is talking about. These intellectuals that are villagers. All of us, village, the village intellectuals. And we want to transform those that have been hijacked, you understand, just to look like us, but they're town and other intellectuals. Bring them back to the village, to the source of knowledge and power and wisdom. Okay, and truth above all. So another series that I'm still looking for, I think Professor Baina, I still have to talk with her on that, on a special series on the 42 laws of Ma'at. I also talked to Babakava, and he could also assist us in that. We take one after the other by combining it and putting the difference between the 10 commandments and the 42 laws of Ma'at. And so that we begin to meditate, repeat. When we come on the Pan-African Daily, the first things we have to do is to recite the 42 laws and meditate on it, like Professor Baina taught us before we even start opening our mouths to say something. Okay, all right. So good night, people, and yeah, we see us tomorrow. Bye.
You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice